Thanks so much for joining. I really appreciate it. And I'm so excited to bring to you an amazing guest on Mental Backroads and Highways. So welcome. Thank you for joining Mental Backroads and Highways. In this live show, I interview incredible leaders who are trailblazing and pioneering for a better tomorrow in our homes, community, and globally. Livestream is part of the Two Mamas to Love platform and focuses on different topics I discuss in my upcoming book, To Mamas to Love, Pioneering a New Kind of Motherhood. And I am thrilled, you guys, to have my special guest with me on the show and my good friend, Jen Cáceres. Jen is the founder and CEO of Perpetual Capacity Coaching and Consulting, and an expert helping individuals and leaders discover what they've outgrown working through antiquated procedures, thoughts, and outdated leadership direction. She's a Gallup certified CliftonStrengths coach and certified executive coach, having impacted hundreds of leaders over the past 15 years in industries from manufacturing, hospitality, construction, and nonprofits to individual career coaching. She left her executive HR role in the corporate world in 2023 to care for her family and for herself. Today, she thrives speaking to individuals and organizations on the incredible power of what we've outgrown in work and in life. Her book, The Great Outgrown, comes out in the spring of 2026. She also has an incredible podcast, Stop, Drop, and Roll. So thank you so much for being with us today, Jen. It's an absolute pleasure.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're joining. Thank you so much, Valerie. Thanks for that intro.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining. Tell us about yourself and your mission, Jen. I just absolutely love everything you're doing.
Sure. Thank you. So as you mentioned, I do have a business called Perpetual Capacity. I do coaching and consulting for executives and corporations and mid-level managers mostly. Right now, I'm working in the construction and manufacturing space, which is kind of the bread and butter of where I enjoy working. So I did have a corporate role, and this may resonate with some of you who are on the call. I was in a corporate role for about, combined almost 15 years, where working myself on that wheel of perpetual, I don't know what's going to happen if I don't slow down. And so in 2023, after a long long span of time with an illness that someone in my family was having, it just took me to a place where I had to slow down. And so that's where the podcast came in, Stop, Drop, and Roll, which we can talk about that if anyone wants to. But I had to take a moment as a professional, as a coach, as a mom, as a partner, all of those things, and really just take an intentional pause. And so for me, it was about stopping and really dropping all of the stories that I was telling myself. And as we think of things that we've outgrown, for me, it was really just recognizing all of these things that I had told myself a story about. And so it was really nice to be able to take that time, take that moment. I do think personally, for me, it was a faith. I'm a faith person of much faith. And so for me, it was just that opportunity to look at what I was doing. How was I impacting the people that I was working with and supporting as a coach, as a professional coach? And was I really doing everyone the service that I needed to do? So stepping back, taking that scary step of starting my own organization and just doing what I love to do, what I was created to do, and working in that space now to help others discover what have they outgrown and what's kind of getting in their way of having that perpetual capacity in life and at work.
I love that. And I love your way with words, Jen. I think that it's that stop, drop, and roll. I would love for you to break that down a bit more for us, because I just love the visual and the concept and how it really can apply to both work as well as in everyday life.
Absolutely. It is funny because, again, I said I'm a person of faith, and I was trying to figure out what was I doing during this time. I had about 9 months where I'd started writing my book, The Great Outgrown. I didn't know what it was going to be called yet, of course, and it sort of turned into this cathartic experience of healing. And what I realized was I had to stop. And this is what I go into in the podcast. It's really about intentionally slowing down. We're in this world of vast, everything has to be done right away. And so slowing down and then dropping that story that we tell ourselves. I think we're all notorious for telling ourselves that, nothing will get done without us. If we don't show up in a certain way, things are going to fall apart. And I know that that's not true, but I didn't at the time. So stop, drop the story. R stands for reflect. So it's really important for all of us, with or without the title, at home or at work, to reflect and ask ourselves some of those really difficult questions, those open-ended questions where we can look in the mirror and dig deep and start to actually recognize how we might be getting in our own way. And that was something for me that was huge. O stands for observe. So observing the feelings, allowing ourselves to feel, allowing ourselves to really take in our body language. Are we having heart palpitations? Are we, ending up in the ER? Are we, not speaking to family members? That kind of stuff, just based on how we're showing up. L stands for listen. So listening to our bodies, listening to people that we trust. But I always throw in the caveat of listening with a filter, because when we go to others, when we go to friends or we go to coworkers, we often get some feedback that is filled with emotion, whether it's someone that really cares about us, maybe it's someone who's competing with us. And sometimes it's about just listening to ourselves. And then the E stands for evolve. So it's roll, R-O-L-E. E is for that baby step, that next step, whatever that is, to really move into what you've discovered after going through that process.
That's amazing. I love that. And I edited here, it R-O-L-E. And so can you one more time just tell us, we have stop, so pausing. I love that. Stopping, dropping like your control. I feel like that's what I think of like, I want to control everything. And tell us one more time that roll acronym. I love that.
Sure. R is for reflect. O is observe. L is to listen. And then E is for evolve, or to grow.
So true. And I think that, Jen, why is this? I mean, I feel like, there's so many questions I want to ask you about this, but I love kind of just practicing this as a mindset. And I feel like there's so many times in my life that if I just stop and pause and lengthen that space and then be able to proceed in these ways, that like, I just feel like I can be more content and more at peace with what's going on with my life, and just kind of allowing myself to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. I think what it does is it allows people to step into that space of recognizing what they don't know, what they assume, or they've told themselves that story. And then the clarity is clouded because we pull in that confirmation bias and we look for everything around us to confirm the story that we're telling ourselves, much like we do in so many things in life. And so it's kind of easy to remember. It's that fun thing from the 80s. If you're one of those kids who had the fire prevention, it's putting out the fires in life and really being able to just have a little process you walk through to see what is the very next thing that you can do. Even if it's minute, it's something to move you into the path of growth.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's amazing. Now, Jen, why do you feel like why do you feel like leaders need more support? Why do we need more support in the workplace as well as at home?
I think the biggest thing in leadership, the biggest thing is that we throw that word around a lot. We sort of identify leadership with someone's title or someone's tenure, and we assume that because they're at the top of the org chart or at the top of the ladder, if you will, right? They are automatically a leader. And leadership is really about your character. And true leadership is your character in action. And so it's something that you can do to, you want to have followers, you have people that follow you, but not like social media. You don't necessarily need likes. You need people that trust you and people that believe in you. And so just going from this, a lot of individuals will be thrust into positions. I talk more and more with people who have started a new job or have had a role and they've never had onboarding. A lot of people are like, well, that's just, filling out paperwork, right? And true onboarding is a plan. It's a 30, 60, 90-day plan. It's something usually that comes from HR. I'm not an HR necessarily proponent, even though I worked in that space. I feel like it's a lot of check the box. And so that, in my mind, leadership comes from the person that's actually overseeing the person and they're reporting to. So it's that character. It's how am I bringing you in? How am I treating you? How am I hearing you and seeing you and building that trust? Managers may not realize this, but engagement, I know it's a buzzword, but the manager of people actually impact their teams. They have 70% of the variance of engagement. This is Gallup information. I'm a Gallup coach. That's how much of an impact your manager has on you, whether or not you are rowing the boat towards the goals of your team and your organization, or if you're just sitting still, you've thrown the oars out, or if you're rowing against what everybody else is doing. And so leadership and management, we can go all day on definitions, but there's just such a big gap in the way we've always done things versus what people need as far as new generation and new workers. So a lot of support. I could talk all day, but I won't. So
that's so true. I think that all of those are just such important points. And, this new generation of like, how do we stop and listen and how do we support? And I love how Andrew says leadership equals character. It's so true. And I think that, Jen, I would love for you to talk with us more about with your podcast. I love listening to the episodes that you have, and you have such pearls for, the workplace, for leadership. And I was just listening to one this morning about, not bringing, essentially, you say it in a much more, a better way, but I like bringing baggage to work. And tell us more about that and more about your podcast and anything you'd like to share, because I highly encourage anyone who's listening to the live today or to the replay to check out Jen's podcast. It's just a wealth of information. Thank
you, Valerie. So the latest episode is, I'm trying to remember the exact name, but I like that. It's what are you bringing to work with you every day? But not what, but who are you bringing to work with you every day, right? So I did not invent this, but I use it, and I can't remember exactly where it came from, but it's this backpack of life concept. And I know a lot of coaches and mental health practitioners use this sort of thing when we're talking through trauma and past hurts and those sorts of things. Well, I had to realize that I was carrying my backpack of life with me, and we all do. It's something that we just carry, right? It's everything that we've brought with us. And so I tried to adapt that to this last episode to just be more aware of, things like we throw around the word toxicity. I also have an episode on toxicity. We throw around, these buzzwords, boundaries, which are crucial at work and at home, but we don't realize where they are lacking or how we kind of came to this place in our life. Okay, I wake up, I'm 45, 55, 60 years old, and I never put boundaries in place. And that was because of something that happened to me when I was 12, or it's something that, happened to me when I reported to a leader who constantly shut me down, or their character was not leaderly. And so we get conditioned, and this happens to all of us. We get conditioned in that way. And then that backpack shows up with us every morning. And it's that ugly conversation we had with our mom 5 years ago that never got resolved. And so just in the podcast, it's really about, it can't be coaching because it's just me talking, but it's kind of bringing those coaching questions to light where you can listen and just intentionally pause and ask yourself again, how am I getting in my own way? A couple of other episodes. So I did one on toxicity and that word toxic. And some of you may or may not relate to this, but scrolling through feeds on Instagram or wherever you go, even I've had a couple that I've responded to on LinkedIn where it's this big thing, you're working in a toxic place when, right? And there's like 8,000 likes and all of these comments. And I get it because I've been there, but it also keeps us there. It keeps us stuck and it keeps us pointing fingers versus saying, you know what, I'm going to step up from that and ask myself, what have I outgrown? What was happening or what am I allowing? How am I teaching people how to treat me that I feel like that was a toxic place? Because at the end of the day, nobody's holding you down. It's essentially us that has to kind of work through that stuff.
I love that. And I love that question. What have I outgrown? I think that's so profound and so much of what I think I have to work on myself of like boundaries and past mental tapes. Like I know for me, I'm always so scared I'm going to get yelled at. That's like my big kind of backpack I bring to everything where I'm like, I'm so scared. So I need to be perfect. I need to do X, Y, and Z. So I don't get yelled at. And when I allow myself to be and allow myself to, like you say, ask like, what have I outgrown? How have I outgrown this? And allow my emotions to kind of pass with it and know that that was then and this is now. I think is just so powerful. And like you're saying, like we all have our own backpacks. It may not be that, it may be something else. And I also love how you had said, about assuming. I think that's so true too. Like sometimes I assume someone is, for me, like my backpack, I'm like, oh, they're mad at me for something. When may not be the case. Usually it's not the case, but it's like this, well, I automatically think that. And so then it gets me into this, like, just then like it's just kind of this chain reaction then almost. And so can you tell us a bit more about, I love the way you explained that in that past episode. I know I keep referring to that episode. It's in the top of my mind, but every single one of your episodes is just incredible. So definitely check out any of the episodes. But yeah, this one, I just remember being like, oh, that's a good one. I think that's so true with the assuming.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think, so I'm also a Gallup CliftonStrengths coach, and I do CliftonStrengths in organizations, and it's similar to things like Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, DISC, if you've done any of those like personality or behavioral things. In my opinion, Strengths is very good at just telling us what we're really good at, what drives us, and what gets in our way. And the reason I bring strengths into this conversation is because we're all so uniquely wired. Some of us will assume all day long and we'll tell ourselves that story and we'll get so caught up that we can't move forward. And others of us are just these strategic thinkers. So we're off already. We're not thinking about it. We're into the future. We're ideating. We're coming up with ideas, right? And then there are other people who they're relationship builders. And so they really dig into my community and my connections are what drive me. And maybe I do have something from the past that I'm assuming. It's funny. I also talk about this in interviewing and stuff, like don't wear perfume if you're going in person, be careful about words that you say and things, because we do associate others with stuff from the past. I was a career coach and I had someone who did not get the job, and it ended up being a communication between me and the hiring manager. And they said, this guy had on this cologne that reminded me of somebody who really did me wrong. So I didn't hire them, and well, that's an awful reason not to get hired, but we bring all of this stuff with us. And so, yes, I talk about that a lot in the podcast and in one-on-one coaching, because I am not a therapist. I will never be. And that's not the intent. Coaching is to really ask those open-ended questions to empower people to see what they've outgrown and where they're sort of getting in their own way. But it is important to just recognize that it's there and that it's part of how we're wired in our DNA.
So true. So true. I love that, Jen. And that's so interesting about the cologne, and makes me think of just brain and like how I think I've read somewhere about how like the memory and smell is just so quickly tied that we don't even think about it. And like that makes sense that like, yeah, if you are putting on a certain scent or something, it'll make you travel right back to whatever that is. And
right.
Fascinating, our brains and how we're like really operating on this, like, we have this higher level thinking, but there's all these other things that we don't even realize we're bringing to the table in other parts of our brain and like subconscious stuff sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, Jenna, please tell us more about like where we can find your podcast. Like, I know we're talking so much about it, and I know you also will be having a book next year, which I'm super excited about that. So please tell us more about like where we can find your podcast, where we can learn more about your upcoming book and all the other work and coaching that you're doing.
Sure. So the podcast can be found on any platform where you listen to your favorite podcasts, from Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube. I am not brave enough, like some of you who like to do the videos, because it's just me. So you would get really bored just looking at me talking all day long. They're about 20 to 30 minutes long typically. And if you listen to them on 1.5, I sound a little bit more like a chipmunk, but you'll get the gist of things. The book, The Great Outgrown, is still a work in progress. It's something I'm extremely proud of, but as I mentioned, it's one of those things, if anyone's ever written a book, and you can raise your hand or whatever if you know what I'm saying, but it starts off as one thing, and Valerie, you probably experience this because your book is coming out very soon, where you write something and then you go back and you're like, no, I'm going to just totally change that. You take 10,000 words out, right? So the plan is to have it coming out next spring. Earlier, I'd like to over deliver if possible, but it is a combination of my own personal journey, which has been one of healing and a very personal journey, along with all of these things that we've outgrown in business and how we work with others in leadership, in those spaces of just being a human to human versus I have this power, I have this, authority over you, versus let's build that trust. And so outgrowing some of those policies, some of those procedures, and those things that we get caught up in. I worked in HR for many years, and I understand that it's important. I understand exactly why it's there, but there are some things there that they just allow us to check a box and make sure we're getting things done versus understanding the why behind those things. And so I talk a lot about that in the book, as well as some of my faith journey. I would not have made it through everything that I went through over the past 10 years or so without my faith. So I do talk about that.
Yeah. And that is such an important point. I mean, I know how you were talking about earlier with the stop, drop, and roll of like letting go. And sometimes you do have to just kind of let it go to like, I know for me, like to a higher power, even like visualizing that sometimes of like, I literally need to let this, whatever I'm carrying go. It can be so, I think difficult at first, but once I allow that to happen, it just can feel so, liberating, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but I think that is so true and so powerful. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right now I have some clients in construction and manufacturing. That is where I worked for about nearly 9 years. And so just bringing in all of that experience and not kind of tying that back to the faith, but there is some of that,
Mhm.
just taking direction on where you're supposed to go. And for those of you that are listening who are sort of in that space of limbo and you're in a role and you're kind of burnt out or you're not really sure if you're fulfilling your purpose, I just encourage you to sort of step back and let some of those questions guide you into that space of where you really should be if you feel like you're not in that right space. But I was driving down the road the other day coming home from the airport, and I've sort of been broadly letting my leadership and development courses and things like that, the coaching, just fall over whomever is interested. And I decided when I was surrounded by two ready mix trucks that mix concrete and a bulker truck that moves cement, and there were several other trucks around me, I just started to take that into consideration and really spend some time on what my niche should be focused on. And so I'm heading back into that space. I do have customers in that space right now, so it makes sense. So uh, I say all of that just for everyone to just do the pause, really consider what is the universe telling you, and what have you outgrown, what are you ready for, and really taking the next steps towards that.
I love that. Love that, Jen. Jen, I feel like I could talk with you all day. I just love everything that you're saying. You're such a wealth of information. Is there anything that you would like to leave with our listeners before we go? And thank you so much for everyone who's joining, Andrew, Zoe, and anyone who listens to replay. Truly appreciate it and appreciate all your support.
I just want to say thank you. I appreciate being on the show with you, Valerie. I think that you have some amazing couple of shows, right? You have your book coming out. You're working and collaborating with others in this space. And you and I have some similarities. I can really relate to the mom portion of things, right? That was what really pulled me out of my career and into another place. So I just want to encourage people to slow down. I know we're told that all the time, and there's thousands of leadership books. I have a bunch of them behind me that we might read, or self-help. And I think the biggest point about any book or podcast or seminar or anything that you go to is none of it will work if you're not ready and don't believe that you need what you're hearing. So it's just about really putting yourself in that place to sort of move forward and grow. And I would leave it there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jen. I love it. And I totally relate to all of that. And the stop, drop, and roll. Like, I think that truly is like what made me create everything that I'm creating, or that I have created too, of like just, yeah, pausing and being like, what am I doing? And what do I do next? And I think that's so true of what you're saying, of that finding, being ready yourself to learn, and also finding those tools within yourself and working through that. And I think that you're just an amazing person, and I just love collaborating with you. And we also are from a similar area, so I thought that was so cool. Such a small world, and I just love the community that we have together.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Valerie. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Well, have a good rest of your day, and thank you everyone who is listening. And I hope you all have a wonderful day as well. Thank you so much.